Hello, Ian. Huge thank you to you for joining me today and giving me your time. How are you?
Very well. Keeping sane with the whole state of affairs that we got right now. Doing all
Yeah.
right, keeping busy, So
And I want to start off today by going right to the start of when you wanted to get into music. And obviously, you were a drummer in Kasabian and have been drumming for a lot of your life. I'd like to know, how old were you and when were your first steps and how did you decide to get into drumming?
I think it decided itself. I think from my memories back then, and I was very young, and I just used to love watching the just when when I used to watch the telly, and the music programs that were on in those days. We had like the old Grey Whistle Test, which was a live music program, and Top of the Pops, and I guess some others which I can't remember now. But I used to love watching I used to love watching it, but I used to love watching the drummers playing, and it fascinated me because in those days the drums were technology had kind of come on rapidly through the 60s into the 70s when I was around, and so drum like guitarists were using Marshall stacks, and like people with long hair, it was all getting quite heavy rock and well, just generally louder. And so the drums were made by the drum companies that were making the hardware and stuff hadn't caught up yet,
Yeah.
the demands of the music that was being made on them. So, which excited me because you had all these drum kits like that were shaking under the pressure that the drummers were doing, And so I used to love that, and I think it must have been something to do with that drama that really kind of got me. And then my dad was a pianist. He had an organ trio or quartet sometimes that he would on a weekend would go around the local sort of dance club scene of Bristol, and which was a completely different thing in those days. There was a lot of work. So my dad had worked during the day, and on a weekend had his band, and so I was very aware of music because of that, I guess. And he really wanted me to sort of get into piano and stuff, and I really didn't want to know. I wanted to be playing the drums. So that's where the whole thing comes from, really. And so he bought me like a drum and some sticks to bash about on. And then he got me my first drum lessons when I was around about 4 years old. And there was a drummer around the corner in our neighborhood. There was a drummer around the corner who was a pro drummer, and at the time he was touring with a band called the Brotherhood of Man, which in those days was the equivalent to touring with Steps or something like that. So he was a proper pro. He was like a real session player who could, who was trading on the international circuit, with a pop band. Okay, in that sense, it was pop, but and so
Yeah.
really, I had like fantastic training from the off. The guy, Mike Holmwood, was his name, and he would. He was the only guy in the whole town who would accept a 4-year-old student, and that was because my dad went on walking around the area, kept on hearing drums coming, emanating from the house, and thought, "Oh, there's a drummer in there. He might teach my son." And literally, brazen, just knocked on the door one day and said, "I hear drums. I got a son who's 4 and he wants to learn to play." And the guy was like, "You're all right then, I'll give it a go." So he just used to give me like a 10-minute spurt of drum lesson and then sit me down on a Saturday morning to watch whatever Saturday morning kids telly there was, and then do another 10 minutes. And really, he taught me properly. He taught me how to, approach the instrument properly with technique, and to read, and actually, started me in the fundamentals of the rhythms of the day, which you needed to know for the dance bands and all that kind of scene. and started me off on jazz independence, which is actually for drums is really quite difficult for students to get their heads round, but it's just a brilliant opener to the drum kit because it opens the whole instrument up. And I was so lucky to have someone who could do that for me for the first few years of my drumming thing. So by the time I was 7, my dad's drummer for one particular random Saturday night was ill, couldn't make a gig. I'd been playing drums for a few years by that point, and I had stable time, so I could play a foxtrot or was it a quick step or a bossa nova? You know, if you've ever watched Come Dancing on a Saturday night, which I don't know if you probably have, but you'll hear this language being said. You know, the cha-cha-cha and the quick step and the foxtrot and the tango and the bossa nova and the samba, and you know, these dances come from traditional music forms from all over the world that have been sort of is the word homogenized? I don't know if that's the word, but I've been sort of like recreated in the West for people to dance to in a ballroom setting. So as in those days, as a ballroom drummer, you would do like a sort of simplified, slimmed down version of a mambo or a cha-cha or a samba. And you need to know the beguine is another one, a rumba. And so I knew these rhythms and I could hold them stably. So my dad threw my drum kit in the back of the car at 7 and he said, "You're coming with me." And I did my first gig and I got paid £5, which I'm going to give my age away now, but I think this is like, we're looking at 1978 or 79. When I say this to the Kasabian lads, when it comes up every now and again, it blows their minds, the fact that, you know, I was gigging in the 70s. They can't quite believe it, you know. It's like, wow, you know. It's like, yeah, you know. I think Elvis might have still been alive, I'm not sure. So that's kind of where, from my perspective, where my story really starts in the drumming thing, really. So,
and you just said there, you obviously clearly had a good understanding of the drums and like the background of music when you were very young. And I spoke with other musicians and footballers about their careers, because when we are young, we all have ambitions to become the biggest we can. But did you think you would make a drummer, or did you really want to do it, but you had ambitions for it, but you also planned for other things in case you didn't, and you just got better as you got older and it sort of like molded in?
I don't know. You see, when I was very young, it's something that I wanted to do, wanted to do, and I felt a genuine excitement. I remember probably I was about 10, I think, and that's right, so still junior school. We would take a family holiday in Bournemouth every year. We'd go down there and stay in a B&B, and in the summer months, and so things happen because, you know, it was a tourist destination, Bournemouth, you know, so things happen. Do you know what I mean? And this particular afternoon, there was a marching band happening in the high street, and I still to this day remember it. And I remember that just, you know, I mean, I used to watch the Whitsun Parade in Kingswood when it was still a thing, and they had the Boys Brigade drummer, you know, band with or you'll have the Bristol Carnival or something, and you have the bands, and I'd just be transfixed. I remember being transfixed this day because it was a different looking band, and actually, as I found out, it was a drum corps, which is an American kind of high school marching band thing, which is massive over there, and they're called drum corps, and they're drum led, and the instruments have a different pitch, different tuning, and they have a color guard with the girls with the flags doing kind of like almost majorette stroke, what they call them in what's the girls, anyway, you know, the girls with the pom-poms, that kind of thing. And I just remember being transfixed by these drummers, you know, a row of snare drummers with the bass drummers and the guys with these kind of what they're called trios at the time, like 3 toms and everything, making this beautiful sound. And that actually turned out that they came from Bristol. And so my dad arranged for me to join them. And I was really young. I was the youngest kid, and I was given the cymbals to start with. And then I worked my way up to drummer. And it was something that I did. And I would go and play with my dad on a weekend. And I would have drum lessons I had drum lessons from various different guys who started to put me into dep gigs. And I'd play jazz with adults. I would be like 13 and going to school, but playing jazz with actual adults who play jazz and stuff around Bristol. And I would do Saturday morning orchestra, you know, for the county schools, and yeah, and I love listening to heavy rock and hard rock, classic rock of the day. New wave of British heavy metal was kicking off, the Iron Maiden and Motorhead, and I love Judas Priest, and then I love Deep Purple and AC/DC and all those kind of bands. I got right into that when I was that age, but I was playing jazz, I was playing orchestral. I mean, you know, I just it was the thing that I did, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then I went through school, and I didn't really enjoy school very much. I didn't really connect with it for various reasons, and so I came out the other end of school, and I'm just a working class kiddie from Kingswood, you know, and kind of the idea is if you flop out of school with whatever you've got, and you go and get a job, you know, unless you were really bright and you did your A levels and then you went off to university. And so really it was like, shit, I need a job. So I started doing shitty jobs, and because I wasn't really very well qualified for anything, but I still kept playing drums, and I eventually got a car. And because I'd been into all this kind of like classic and heavy metal, classic rock and heavy metal and stuff, I thought I want to get in a rock band. And so I started doing that as well. And I got into my first rock band, I think, when I was about 18, I think. And so at the same time pursued jobs. And it wasn't until I was about sort of 19, I think it was, 19, 20. And I was working for the Royal Mail, what was it called, Parcel Force. And I was data inputting and doing all that kind of stuff and figuring out the claims for people who've lost damaged parcels in the post and whatever have you. And it just hit me. It was like, Jesus, if I do, like, at that point, I was still playing. I did rock. I was just doing like some original things. I was in a band with a dodgy name called Excite. That was fun. And I would do like a wedding gig thing, and I would do some jazz things. And actually, I thought to myself, if I like just did some wedding gigs, if I did 2 wedding gigs or function gigs on a weekend, and maybe a throw in a little sort of jazz gig or something in the week, I could probably pretty much swap out, have the wages I'm making from coming to work, having to be in the office by whatever time, 9 o'clock or whatever, or getting to deep shit for being late and being yelled at by this twat who's, you know, some kind of line manager, and just hating life and with nowhere to go really with it. You know, there's no mission for me. It was not like I'm an engineering or civil engineering degree or something that I was going to work my way through the system. And so I did that. And in doing that, I realized I had to trade then as a sort of pro musician on the Bristol scene. And just doing that in the Bristol scene, I knew I had to get my chops together much more than I had. So yeah, I sort of worked my ass off on my playing, and managed to get myself to a point where I had a reputation on the Bristol scene, you know. And over the years following that, I got into a place where I was, at one point, I was like in 14 bands at once. I was doing the panto at the Theatre Royal from about, I did 7 years of panto at the Theatre Royal in Bath. And that would be 2 shows a day for 6 weeks. I started teaching drums at the local schools, the Bristol schools, and then eventually finished up at Millfield School for a few years, being the main drum teacher there. And so I'd gone from like data input in Parcel Force to like supporting myself from the playing of or the teaching of drums. And it was hard work, but it was what I wanted to do. And I think at that point, that was my point of success, because I'd emancipated myself from that work situation. That's what I wanted. But of course, with like any business or any job, the prospect of promotion in that was always something I wanted, you know, and to be the guy that got the call. Now, the Kasabian thing, I was getting a bit older by this point. So that had been a flash in when I was about 21, 22 of like, oh my God, it'd be amazing to be getting a band and do the rock star vibe, you know. But that, you know, I did some auditions and stuff, and nothing came of it. And it kind of drifted off, and it wasn't really my raison d'etre, if you like, of doing it. And then but I tell you what was more the thing for me was, you know, to get the call. Now it's going to sound daft, but to get the call maybe to go on tour with Shirley Bassey or Tom Jones, or maybe do something like cool, like, I don't know, like anything. I don't know. Like, I know drummers today like Ash Sohn, who is that guy, you know, who gets that call. But I really wanted to be on an album that gets properly released, and I wanted to get out and do a tour, and I wanted to experience a higher level of the music industry than what I'd achieved in as much as being a Bristol drummer. You know, doing the pantos, doing some cruises, you know, cruise ship gigs, and doing like loads of projects. I did lots of drum and bass, hip hop stuff, lots of jazz, you know, all sorts of things. So Kasabian, that was not on the radar at all, really. I think to be a fully fledged pro musician, live off that and get recognition for that and get promoted through the ranks was, I think, fair to say, my total motive.
Because you working your way up to Kasabian, you fully deserve it by the sounds of it, because you had this passion that you clearly loved, and you stuck to it, and you made it massive in the end. And
well, I suppose so, yeah. I mean, you know, the Kasabian thing was interesting because, you know, when I met Kasabian, they weren't Kasabian, but they were just barely like Kasabian anyway. I mean, they'd been Syracuse, and they'd got their sort of they got some development money through a guy who was a manager at the time, and they were able to afford to come to Bristol. And because it was like, that was the year 2000, so we'd just been through the 90s where we'd had, you know, like a Bristol revolution in music. You know, we'd had Tricky and Massive Attack, Portishead, you know, loads of people recorded here, you know, like Nina Cherry and all that kind of stuff. A lot of those people were coming out of Bristol and or associated with it. And so those lads, you know, doubtlessly there was going to be demo studios in around Leicester that could have done what they needed, but they really wanted to come to Bristol and, you know, like drink in the atmosphere here and see if they could get some inspiration here whilst making their sort of initial demos, really. And that's where I came in involved, because as it turned out, they needed a drummer of the sessions, and the guy whose studio it was, Matt, knew me, and there was a to and fro between me and Matt, because I would help him and a friend of ours doing like some kind of like after hours project, you know, in his studio. And then when he got working and an artist needed the drummer and there was a few quid in it, you know, then he would recommend me and I would get some work back. You know, we're talking like 100 quid or something for 3 hours, you know. And that's how I met Kasabian. You know, these were lads. This wasn't like getting on a fancy tour bus and like, you know, getting on like that. It was literally, you know, I met 4 lads on a sofa in a room as I came down. It was a basement studio, and there were 4 lads there, you know, on this sofa. And I sort of went, right, well, hi, I'm Ian, I'm your drummer today. That's like literally the first thing I said to him. And so, you know, and that's kind of where it started. So I did the sessions, and the first thing I recorded, I believe, was Process Beats.
Oh yeah.
And Butcher Blues as well I did on those sessions, which is off that first album, which I love that tune. It's got such a great pace and like chilled out vibe, you know. It's like, it's really Bristol, actually. It's a real Bristol kind of vibe, that track. Like so yeah, so with them boys, I mean, they really, they from the word go, I loved the music that I was playing on. It was just like, this is great, you know. It's like, this isn't just like some sort of shitty demo I'm doing, you know, for somebody, and it's like, yeah, it's great, but yeah, you know, this was like, oh, this is a bit different, you know, it's a bit fruity. So anyway, so I did that. I think I did a couple of sessions for them over time, and then they went off and they got signed, and which is a feat in itself, because getting signed in those days is difficult anyway. And they did that, and then they came back to me to do more, which I could because they're from Leicester, I'm from Bristol, and I had a baby at that point, or you know, my little girl would have been, so they got signed in 2002, so she would have been like 3 years old, you know. So I couldn't get too much more involved, but I would go up to the farm in Leicestershire, and spend a weekend with them here or there, and do things like, I did a little drumming on things like Clubfoot and other tunes off that first album. But I was also, you know, as I described, I was very busy with other things as well. So I think Serge used his mate Dan would come in and do some drumming, and then eventually they got out on the road, doing like 2 or 3 cars in a row, going to wherever up and down the motorways, doing those gigs that small young bands do. In Bristol, we got like Louisiana. I think they played here actually during that period. So again, they started auditioning for young drummers to join them, and I think they went through a few different ones back then. But there's one guy called Ryan, I think, who kind of stuck a little bit, and so he did Reason is Treason off that first album. I don't know if he did anything else. He definitely did Reason is Treason. And then Ryan decided, because back then they're signed, but they're doing these little sort of dodgy dives, you know, little proving ground gigs. So I think it was, the belief for him wasn't there, so he left. His brother took over, he was a pro drummer, but his brother played for oh my god, what are they called? Sean's band, another Bristol band. It's just gone out of my head now. I've forgotten what they were called. What are they called? They were quite big. Anyway, so he toured around with Kasabian for a bit, but he had to go back to what are they called? He had to go back to the band because they were going to go back out and tour. So he sort of weighed it up and went with them, and so leaving them drummerless. And they had a big gig. They had a big tour coming in, like 2-week tour with a band called Von Bondies from Detroit. And that was like next week, and they needed a drummer next week.
Oh wow!
So they figured, well, we might as well ring Ian, because at least he's done half the album.
Which only right.
So the thing is, I hadn't seen them boys. I don't think I saw them all the way through 2003. I think in 2002 they got signed, or maybe, yes, I did some stuff early 2003. And then that was it. I just went off doing my thing and whatever have you, you know, whatever. And then 2000, that was April 2004. So literally, my God, yeah, Easter 2004. So 18 years ago. Yeah, 4, something like that. No, 17 years ago.
Yeah, 17. Yeah,
17 years to now. I got a panic call from the manager going, right, what are you doing the next 2 weeks? I got 2 weeks off Milford. I was at Milford. Got 2 weeks off school, and I got a few gigs. But what's going on? Kasabian. Then Kasabian, they still going? Great. What's happening? They got 2 weeks with this band. Blah, 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 blah. We'll pay you. Can you get to London on the weekend? Can you get rid of those gigs? And it's 2 weeks. and we're starting in London, and we're going to go up and down the country, and great. I went, yeah, okay. And so, yeah, and that was where really, you know, that next level started with those boys. And I did some rehearsals with them, and then just like with a notebook, and went on the road with them, did the 2 weeks, had an absolute blast. Came back, and then Serge rang me and said, well, what do you reckon? You know, the album's coming out in September. We're doing Glasgow. We've got some gigs all over the place. It's going to be, we've got Europe going on, and there's talk of us going to America, and it's going to be a blast. It's 18 months of your life. Do you fancy it? And I was like, well, yeah, okay. That's where that started.
And it's safe to say Kasabian became one of the most successful British bands, massively popular. But when you first met the rest of the lads, did you see the talent in them? Which you thought they'd get to that level?
It's just, they were like babies. It was like they were 20, maybe even 19, maybe 20. And so I'm obviously older than those boys, so it's like, I'm obviously the drummer for the day going in. So, but what I did recognize was that, as I said, the songs were fruity. There was something going on. It was really interesting, and there was a rapport immediately between me and them, and me and Serge. And obviously it's Serge's music, Serge is the writer, so it was like when I was in the sessions, I was obviously working with Matt, whose studio it was, and he was engineering and stuff, but obviously, I was getting direct cues from Serge, who we were working together to try and get the drums right, and he would show me what kind of thing he was thinking of, and what the drum patterns were that he'd written to, and all this kind of stuff. And so I had an immediate rapport with him, and so yeah, it was very easy straight away to work with him.
And did you become the official drummer for West Pauper, if that's right?
What do you mean?
Because I think, was Karloff the drummer for a while?
No.
No. So that's my error.
Because you could be thrown off the scent on the net if you're digging around and looking at old information about the band, which you would naturally be researching it. There's some confusing stuff. There's a drummer. There's like some people who have been attributed to being Kasabian drummers, and there's this guy called Ash Hannis, who actually owned a drum kit that I used for a bit on that first tour. And Ash was kicking around before I got on the bus in 2004. He was a sound engineer for them, but somehow he's attributed on the net as being the drummer for Kasabian, a drummer for Kasabian. The thing about Karloff playing the drums was he played drums on a video.
That's it, yeah. I apologize for that error.
But that's not playing drums. That's miming the drums.
Yeah.
And that was because I was utterly exhausted from a tour. And they were going to do the video, and I obviously got little kid. Actually, by 2004, I had my second child, and I was knackered. And they just gave me the weekend off, and they went off and did the LSF video, and they were cool with it. And Karloff was like, "Yeah, okay." He just sort of played the drums, so he just mimed the drums, really. So no, no, it was none of that. And actually, so what happened really in 2004? I was a drummer. I was a hired drummer through 2004, and then a year later, the April 2005, is when they brought me in as a proper partner of the business. I became a band member.
Yeah.
Stadium. So yeah, that's kind of the story. So in a way, it's like, although I'm from a different town, I'm a different age group, my story with them does go back to the beginning as an original, working on that first album. And although, there was some drummers for a few, like 6 months or so in there, You know, I feel like, I feel as if I was part of that process, the original nugget of the band. You see what I mean? So,
Yeah. But I have to say, I apologise for that, Emma, because
no, don't worry about that. That's fine.
and thanks for correcting me, because that has thrown me off the scent for years. But at least I've learned it now.
That's all right. That's no problem. That's no problem.
It's fair to say that you achieved multiple successful moments, winning Best British Band at the 2010 Brits, headlining Glastonbury. Do you have any favourite memories that stand out with your time in the band?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, playing Glastonbury was incredible. You know, there's certain things that are like abstract for me, I guess, that stick out. You know, like being a Brit winner is one thing. That was incredible. But what no one knows about is the fact that the day before we had to sound check and camera block that, because obviously as winners we were going to play. We played, didn't we? You know, and there had that fire going off around us, and all the rest of it. And so we had to go in the day before. So what they did was they did the whole show in reverse. And so we walked into the auditorium of, you know, there, and like, it was Earl's Court, which is no longer exists now, does it? It's been brought down. We walked into Earl's Court. I mean, Earl's Court was a massive place. I think it holds 20,000 people, or it held 20,000 people. And we just walked straight into Lady Gaga's soundcheck. And she was on a piano, and it was just her and a piano singing. And yeah, my chin dropped. Literally, I couldn't believe how actually wonderful she sounded. There wasn't none of the pop stuff or anything going on.
Yeah,
just her trying a mic out, getting her levels right, and she was just singing and playing, and it sounded incredible, absolutely incredible. But yeah, I mean, the Glastonbury headliner is something I would always take with all the Glastonbury performances. You know, I would take with me. The touring. I mean, there's so many memories. It's like a film in my head. You know, it's 17 years of being in that band and all the craziness, because we did tour heavy, very hardworking band, and we went around the world so many times. It got to a point where, you know, British Airways just gave us gold membership because we had so many air miles, you know. And I got to a point where even if we were just doing a little hop to Europe in you know, in the back of the plane, I could still go in to the BA lounge and have my eggs made how I wanted them. You know what I mean? It's just, and the friendships you make, and the people who work in the crew with you, and the friendships you make with them, and yeah, you know, and like getting to know cities, you know, getting to know your favorite places to go in a city. Yeah, it's just incredible.
Because one of the things I wanted to ask you was, you've obviously toured the world, like you've just said there, but do you have any most memorable moments, or there can be funny moments like on the tour bus, all that type of stuff that you'd like to share?
Wow, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I've had so much time off it as well. I haven't really thought about it very much.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, there was always something going on somewhere, you know. It's just, you know, crazy stuff. Like, I mean, I remember one weekend, we literally, I can't believe it. We flew to Sydney for a weekend. I mean, only in a band list, unless I suppose some executives do that, the company executives. But we did 2 nights at the Sydney Opera House. So we flew. I got in a car. I went to Heathrow, I think on a Thursday, I think it was. Flew to Sydney, did 2 nights at the Sydney. I had the Friday like night to get your head around it all, and then did 2 nights at the Sydney Opera House. Then flew back on the Monday. It was like, right, great, home again. I was like literally laid out on the sofa going, what just happened? You know, that was weird. And actually, when we went out there, I felt completely fine. Actually, from a jet lag point of view, I felt completely awesome. Some of the other lads got really affected by it, and I was all right. And then when we came back, I spent nigh on the week on the sofa. I was absolutely, beside myself with it all. But I mean, yeah, so much goes on. We have laughs in that, you know, you meet so many people out on the road, you know, like doing the festivals is amazing because you keep bumping into the same people.
Yeah.
Because we're all on the circuit, because we've all got an album out, you know, whether that be Lily Allen being Daft, or like Muse Boys, or Tame Impala, or something like that, or when they're Pond, when the lads who are in Tame Impala break off and do Pond. You know, Bastille and all these bands, you know, you just over the years and you just get to know them, you know, and it's really cool. You know, there's a lot of nice people in the industry, although it's all about being a cock and like showing your feathers and like,
Yeah.
you know,
Got it in the band.
Yeah, you know, whatever. Actually, there's a lot of really quite pleasant people who float about that scene, and musicians, and do you know what I mean? So
yeah. And touring and playing all of these gigs, I'd like to know, is there any in particular favourite Kasabian songs you used to love playing the drums to during gigs?
well, you know, the one good thing about being a drummer in that band, I mean, although I suppose playing wise it's quite straightforward and it's got to be powerful, there's plenty going on, you know, with the drum parts. It's not like total pop simplicity like say Coldplay, you know, where you can kind of go from the hats to the ride and back to the hats and little fill, and you've got a nice little chorus. It's actually quite dramatic, and as a drummer playing in that band, you know, a lot of the tunes throw so many different things you got to do, you know. So Shoot the Runner is a complete contrast because it's all toms and that kind of like swingy almost what's it called, the glam rock vibes. Or Mothman as well is like very similar approach. Whereas like, you know, LSF has kind of got that kind of swingy swagger to it. LSF's always a great tune because the people in the crowd go bananas for it. You know, they lap it in, like, you know, and like yell that chorus back at us as loudly as they can. You know, I mean, Vlad the Impaler is like such a powerful tune to play. You know, they're all amazing. One of the funniest tunes to play to was when we were recording the second album at Rockfields. Our producer had to go back to London, and so we got on the Source. We'd done the day's work, and we all had our evening meal, and we all got on the beers and stuff. And the surgeon was like, "I got a tune. Let's just go back down to the studio." And our engineer was kicking about, and so he opened up and stuck the stuff on, and we just rehearsed out this tune. And we actually got to a point where we made a full pass of it, and then we all kind of like went back to because Rockfields is residential, you live there, and so, you know, we were able to do that, and we sort of woke up next day, you know, and the producer had come back, and I remember going down to the studio, walking into the control room, and he was just loving it. He was like going, "I know you boys would like doing it off the cuff, but this is the one." Well, of course, it wasn't done to any metronomic, you know, precision. There was no click track, so you couldn't like edit it and do stuff with it. It was just totally like, it's just totally ramshackle. And so we went with that, and then there were strings put on it and all sorts of stuff. And it was a song called The Doberman, and it actually turned into a big tune for the fans. It was an album tune, but fans love it, you know. So we had to play it live, and of course, on that record now, they've got string section. I'm in Rockfield, so it's these metal bars on the windows in one of the hallways. I'm just clanging them to kind of get this almost bell sound, clang sound. You've got all these effects, all the stuff that we built on the track, and there was no click track to it, so I couldn't put click in my ear to play along to it. So when we played it live, not only are we playing it live, but you can get all the sounds and stuff. And it was like, well, it's like such a shame to lose that just to play it as, you know, as just the band. So we decided to put my drums in, and every night, every time we played that tune, I had to play to my drunk self, playing the drums to this tune I didn't really know, but became the soundtrack of that album. You know? So I did that every night, and of course my time was going up and down, and I knew where I would speed up and where I would slow down, you know, and I got it down to a fine art.
I massively respect you drummers, because personally I think you are the hardest working in the band.
We can be, especially in a rock band,
constantly keeping that beat.
Yeah, in a heavy, powerful band, the drummers are working hard because you've got to maintain the energy, the flow of the energy, and from one night to the next.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's any different mentally, but physically, possibly, you know, if you're doing jazz or something like that, particularly, you know, with acoustic instruments, then it's all about keeping the sound down, the volume down. So then it's a different thing. But when it comes to like giving it proper welly every night, yeah, you've got to keep your mind sound and your body sound as well, you know. So
one of my favorite drum beats of yours is when you first come in on the track Stevie.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's again, and you know, that's a really popular tune, isn't it? You know, it's a great tune. And it kind of motors along that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since I played these tunes, but yeah, it's great.
Another thing I want to ask you before we finish, Ian, the Kasabian music videos is something I've always liked. In particular, the Fire one, Rewired. Are You Looking for Action, where you and Chris are dressed up, sat at that table?
Yeah, that was a moment.
Is there any of these
video shoot? I'm Serge coming over going, Ian, I haven't said anything to you yet, but I've got an idea. Yeah. Do you mind being the Queen? Oh, Serge.
And you couldn't pull out at that point, I guess.
No, well, that was the live Facebook event, wasn't it? And
yeah.
We had loads of mates and extras in that social club. I think it was Hoxton or somewhere like that. And they're all in this big social club. And so there must have been at least 50 or 60 people in that room, plus the crew as well. And no one knew about it apart from us in the band. And they actually were planning on putting Chris as the Queen and me as the King. But as it turned out, the Queen outfit didn't fit Chris or me, but the King outfit actually fitted Chris. So would I be happy to be the Queen? And they said, look, we're going to send a motorbike rider to Angels, which is the big theatre costumers in London, and get you an Elizabethan, you know, outfit.
Yeah.
It's the Dawn. Do you do it? So all right. I said, yeah, okay. So we had all afternoon we went into rehearsals because we had to rehearse this thing down because it was going to be one take, live to Facebook, one camera, being led around, so everything had to come in, and you know, so it was like military precision. And gradually there was 2 makeup artists who all afternoon worked upon me, gradually adding more to me. And so I kept coming in and out eventually with more and more makeup on and getting funny looks from people, but sitting down opposite Chris and doing another take. Right at the end, eventually, just literally like, I think it was like literally half an hour before the moment was coming, the bloody outfit turns up, so that they put me in this outfit. I leave the room, they put me in the outfit, on goes the wig, the tiara, the whole thing, and I'm finished. And then I remember literally it was like, and I kind of like hammed it up a bit, the double doors I literally swung them open, and there was a big hubbub going on inside. Everyone was chatting. You know what happens?
Yeah.
Walked in, I floated in, and the whole place stopped.
And just look.
And everyone just looked at me like that as I kind of like wafted in, you know. Never forget that moment.
Was that the funnest one to film for you? Because Rewired's another good one, filming in all different cars.
That was fun. Yeah, that was great fun. You know, going from the Merc to the Ford Escort to the Trio, the little bike, quad bike thing, not quad, you know, that bike was done in post-production. So that was one of those, I think it was those twin bike things.
Oh yeah.
And then they did it so it made it look like it was all 5 of us on the bike. And Yeah, and then landing up in the Fiat Uno, and then at the end we were really tired, so that was a whole day's filming, and at the end driving through London in that flipping camper van. Yeah, that was really tired that night. The Empire
Yeah.
was like 2 days on a Romanian battlefield, dressed in woolly Crimean outfits from Angels again, costumiers, with all these Romanian guys who were the extras in that, the other soldiers and stuff. I mean, we went up and down that field, and yeah, that was. And the bit where we all get blown up, there was like this little competition amongst us who can do the best death, like, and then of course, Fire doing the stick-up job, which actually was a South African village that we hired. It was cheaper to go to South Africa, stay the night in Johannesburg, and then to Johannesburg we stayed no, Cape Town, drive into the countryside, hire the local school and the local undertakers, and some American police cars an American police car, and have a weapons guy come in, film people, because the South Africans don't have the same health and safety red tape that would be in the UK, so it's cheaper to do all that than to film it in the UK. And they got loads of, so the police car was easy to hire, the firearms expert was easy to hire, because so many American, British and European films are made over there because of that. You don't realize it.
Yeah.
And so the Undertakers was on the corner, and that was turned into our bank. So when we walked into that, we literally walked doing the hard man thing, walked in to all the coffins. And we had to keep walking in and in and in, and it was really eerie because we got to the back of the shop where they had all the children's coffins and stuff like that. And it was like, And then the actual bank itself was the library of a school. So we went down the road and filmed all that in the library of the school, and it was all decked out to look like the bank.
Yeah.
And the bit where we come out the back of the bank?
Oh,
that's the back of a supermarket there.
Oh, wow.
And actually, Tom falls over.
Yeah.
Tom fell over.
he must have a problem with falling over. Pretty Awards too.
Yeah, no, sorry, it wasn't Tom. It was Chris that fell over. Chris actually fell over, and they decided to keep it in.
Yeah. Wow. So that was actually a proper fall.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And I have to ask, I can't imagine you were too happy with being killed off in that video.
Again, you can do a great death.
Yeah.
That was another funny moment, was the bit where we were like, Chris had been shot and we were in this little room and we were like working out what to do, and I was meant to be the boss. That's why I'm doing all the yelling at them.
Yeah.
And so I was told by the director, Wiz, to so what it is now is, it's all going wrong, you're panicking, you're trying to instill some discipline in the lads. Right, let's do it. Let's tell them, let's get out of here. And of course, I kind of went, all right, Wiz, all right. And I turned around to them and I absolutely bawled them out in the room. Forgetting that, it's like there's no sound, and they all jumped. And like, no. You can mime it. Oh, that was funny. Again, long days, long filming days, but brilliant fun, and I'm so glad I was able to experience it.
Ian, finally, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. No problem. I'm glad I could help you out. And I'm going to go enjoy the nice weather now.